Okay. The Finance Committee of the Cook County Board will reconvene. Commissioners, as you know, the state's attorney was scheduled for today. We have rescheduled her for 12:30, Tuesday, July 28th, after the Pension Committee. A notice will be going out, but the state's attorney had a personal issue that she could not attend today. So we begin with the public defender, Amy Campanelli. Amy, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for inviting me to speak today. Thank you, Chairman Daly and all the commissioners. So as you know, the mission of the Law Office of the Cook County Public Defender is to protect the fundamental rights, liberties, and dignity of each person whose case has been entrusted to our care. As the mission reflects, my overriding consideration in every decision that I make in this office is the best interest of the clients that we serve. As I submitted last week in my mid-year budget report to you, and I think I submitted a supplemental one a few days ago, the basis for providing public defenders to those who are poor and can't afford their own attorney is the Sixth Amendment to the United States Constitution. Having the help of an attorney with a criminal case or a case where children might be forcibly removed from their parents is a fundamental right protected by the Constitution. It is also protected by Illinois statute. So this is my 5th year as the public defender and my 6th budget report to this board. This year has been much different than all others due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The pandemic has created a backlog of cases for the court system, which will take months to resolve. In the immediate aftermath of the court closure, it substantially increased the amount of work for my staff. Let me explain. I filed an emergency petition in the circuit court on March 20th for the mass release of clients from the Cook County Jail. We knew before the first client tested positive or the first correctional officer tested positive for the virus in the jail, we needed to reduce the jail population as quickly as possible to avoid a crisis. Since presiding Judge Martin entered an order after I filed that motion for expedited bail hearings on March 23rd, we've had more than 5,000 hearings for release. As a result, we safely reduced the jail population from about 5,500 to a low of 4,031 on May 9th. This has been the lowest jail population since 1985. The pandemic also increased the amount of work that lies ahead for my office. Clients who are out of custody need to be contacted to ensure they attend court and avoid having warrants issued for their arrest. There's an immense backlog of cases that need to be disposed of, and our clients need to have their cases heard. Clients who are suffering from mental illness have been waiting for evaluations for 4 months. In the child protection courts, parents have been waiting months for hearings so they can be reunified with their children and resume visits. I commend the offices of the president, the chief judge, the state attorney, clerk, and sheriff in pulling together on very short notice to make court functional, albeit virtual, for the past 4 months. So turning to the duties of my office, we serve the public far beyond the responsibility to provide effective legal representation to those who cannot afford an attorney. We are the check and balance against police abuse and authoritarian control. In a governmental system that relies on checks and balances, we're the check against unjust arrests and convictions. And in a system where 90% of those arrested and charged are for the most part young black and brown men, we're the front line in the battle against systemic racism. The racism that has plagued the criminal system since the outset has gained renewed attention in recent months, as you know. Images of a white police officer callously kneeling on George Floyd's neck for nearly 9 minutes sparked outrage, resulting in protests that swept across the country, including here in Chicago. Hundreds of people were arrested by the Chicago police during Black Lives Matter protests and kept in isolation at police stations around the city and denied the right to call their family or a lawyer. Attorneys in our police station unit spent hours trying to locate individuals who had been arrested in order to represent them and protect their rights. We put out the call and we rounded up a group of volunteer attorneys to help us go to police stations to handle the hundreds of people who were arrested during the protests. There are laws in Illinois that have been on the books since 1963. Let me repeat that. 1963, before Miranda versus Arizona became the law, that require that those arrested shall have the right to communicate with an attorney and their family, and to consult with an attorney in private by making a reasonable number of phone calls within a reasonable time of arrest. To enforce this law, Illinois' administrative code provides that anyone arrested be given access to a phone within 1 hour of arrest. I am currently, as you may or may not know, suing the Chicago Police Department over its refusal to follow this law. This past weekend highlighted why the public defender is so important. There were protests against racism in Grant Park. While she was protesting and backing away from an officer, a young woman was punched in the mouth by the officer and lost her front teeth. President Preckwinkle and Mayor Lightfoot both condemned what happened, as I'm sure many of you did. Who will be defending the protesters who are arrested? Who will be challenging this narrative of the Chicago Police Department that the protesters were disorderly? It will be my public defenders. Systemic racism and abuse, though, is not confined only to the police. When courts closed due to COVID, the Department of Children and Family Services decided that supervised visits between parents and their children and between sisters and brothers should be suspended until the pandemic had passed. I called for this cruel practice to stop. We sent letters. And as the pandemic eased a bit, Illinois was already allowing restaurants, golf courses, and beauty salons to open. But the Department of Children and Family Services did not allow parents and children to resume visits. Moreover, in Cook County, Black residents comprise 22.8% of the population, but 70.8% of families involved with the Department of Children and Family Services. So, once again, we sued the Department of Children and Family Service because Black lives matter and Black families matter. The trial judge ruled against us over in Chancery, and we're appealing that decision right now. You know, someone has to speak up and challenge authority when it's wrong. That is the role of the public defender. In Cook County, it's my office that challenges the institutional racism we see in law enforcement and the court system. Our public defenders see it every day. We give breath, we give meaning to Black Lives Matter. We do it by protecting our clients' rights. Since April of 2018 through the end of June of 2020, looking at my data, my attorneys visited 2,054 clients who were held in police stations, hospitals, and other places of custody. We walked out uncharged 367 clients who never should have been arrested. That's 18% of those we visited. Compare the number we visited to the arrest statistics from the Chicago Police Department in that year, 2018. Chicago Police arrested over 85,000 people in 2018. We visited and protected the rights of only 1.2% of those arrested. Think what we could accomplish if we saw even 10% of the people arrested. Moreover, over 62,000 of those arrested in 2018 were Black, and almost 15,000 were Latinx. That's a total of 90% Black and brown men and women. While public defenders are fighting in court every day, exposing false police reports, unlawful search and seizure, coerced confessions, and inhumane treatment upon arrest, since 2004, and I believe I told you this last year, taxpayers have paid approximately $1 billion in settlements and attorney's fees for Chicago police misconduct, behavior that public defenders have been calling out for decades. We're the only office that stands with our clients against this misconduct by holding the police accountable. When people are treated fairly on arrest, in the street, in court, they trust the system, guilty or innocent. They deserve a fair shake. So distrust comes when rights are ignored, confessions are forced, and the truth is hidden. You treat people humanely, and even if convicted, they know they weren't cheated out of justice. So to bring trust to the system, I have several initiatives that I see as opportunities. First, we must help the many non-citizen residents of Cook County by creating an immigration advice and representation unit in my office. In 2010, so 10 years ago, the United States Supreme Court ruled that criminal defense attorneys must know the immigration consequences of a conviction and advise their clients accordingly. An attorney who fails to give proper immigration advice is ineffective as a matter of law, and those cases will be reversed. The number of non-citizen clients of the public defender is considerable. These clients hail from 34 different countries and from every continent except Antarctica and Australia. My office currently has no one versed in immigration law. So I have a phased-in 3-year plan to start this unit. I started talking to all of you about 3 years ago about this unit, and I'm talking to you again about it today. First, I'm already interviewing an immigration attorney supervisor out of my existing resources, not asking any money for that. Once hired, this person will carefully assess our clientele over the span of a few months and determine what is needed in terms of training, education, and a referral system to provide that advice for those non-citizen clients, as well as what is required with more possible staff that I will need. We've already received tremendous support from community advocates and leaders, some of you who were today with me at a press conference, and others I know who couldn't be there today, to create this immigration unit. I anticipate a public-private partnership with grant money available. Second, we could begin to address directly the immigration needs of the existing non-citizen clients that I already represent by representing them in court on their immigration matters. So for clients facing detention and removal, the outcome in their criminal case is totally intertwined with the result in immigration court. So a unified defense in both courts is necessary. Third, based on resources and budget, we could begin representing non-citizens in immigration court that are currently unrepresented, that go to court, are detained unrepresented, and are removed from the United States unrepresented. So when a non-citizen in Cook County is detained and subject to removal, he or she leaves behind, as you know, a job. Many of the clients who are detained are the only breadwinners for their family. They leave behind their family, and in the end, it increases the financial burden on county resources. So representing non-citizens is financially sound and an efficient delivery of services of this county. So another opportunity I see to bring trust to the system is a grant I received last year from the Department of Justice to hire an education attorney. My office was one of only 4 agencies in the country. I was the only public defender office to receive this grant from the Department of Justice. And we represent over 95% of the youth who are petitioned into juvenile court. Educational disengagement is one of the most significant collateral consequences of a criminal court involvement for our youth. In addition to navigating school reentry and suspension and expulsion hearings, children with court involvement need support that only an attorney focused on that work can provide, including assessing needed and often legally mandated social and educational services. A third opportunity that I see to bring trust and transparency to our system of justice is data collection and sharing. So my soon-to-be hired Chief Data Officer and Data Clerk are both funded through a grant that I received last year from the MacArthur Foundation to coincide with the larger grant received by Cook County to safely reduce the jail population and reduce the racial and ethnic disparities of the people who are in jail. So let's turn to my current budget for fiscal year 2020. I was given a holdback target of just over $5 million. Working with my Chief Financial Officer, Peter Kaserka, we were able to delay hiring, reduce money spent on transportation, expert witnesses, and other line items in order to save over $3 million. We are also working with budget to meet the rest of the holdback target, approximately a little less than $2 million. We sent a reimbursement request to the budget office for COVID-related work and expenses that currently amount to $1.3 million. This COVID-related initiative reduced the jail population, as I already told you, by more than 2,000 people. We are also working to gather additional COVID-related work and expenses that will qualify for reimbursement under the CARES Act. So once approved, these monies will be and should be credited towards my holdback target. Additionally, we are volunteering to defer a $500,000 capital project that can also go towards this current holdback. Now, as to my budget for next year, my fiscal year 2020 budget was $78 million and some change. To maintain a status quo budget and cover scheduled wage increases and contractual obligations, my budget for fiscal year 2021 would have to be approximately $81 million. The budget office, as you know, is asking all departments to take a 9% cut across the board. Our target number from budget is $71.3 million. However, the 9% cut was from fiscal year 2020's budget, not the status quo budget with those contractual and COLA increases that would be necessary for 2021. In actuality, to my office, the cut is over 12% of my status quo budget. We will continue to work with budget and the president's office, but the reality is we cannot meet this budget target and still provide effective legal representation and do all the things I just told you that we do. The financial strain imposed by COVID-19 is understood. No question. We understand the strain. But respectfully, not all departments can accommodate cuts. Merely because a budget cut is applied equally to all departments does not render it equitable. As the president has stated on the Cook County webpage regarding equity, we have a unique responsibility to reduce inequity by ensuring policies and fiscal decisions consistently and fiscal decisions that consistently meet the needs of all residents, especially residents who are often marginalized and excluded from decision making. Well, that's what we do as public defenders. We represent people who are marginalized and excluded every day. We cannot meet our budget target and still meet our constitutional obligation to provide legal representation for the poor. We already border on providing ineffective representation due to heavy workloads, which will significantly increase when the normal court hearings resume, and we can finally begin working the backlog of the cases that was created because of the shutdown. To meet the proposed budget target of more than 12%, we estimate a significant number of layoffs. I would, by necessity, have to close divisions and refuse to represent certain categories of clients. These clients are still entitled to legal representation under the law, but that would have to come from privately appointed counsel, not the public defender, since we would not have the resources to defend them. The cost of appointed private counsel would be assessed to the county. Let me just take an example of one division of my office. I noted that it currently represents 663 felony clients. Private attorneys appointed by the court are often paid at a rate that starts at about $100 an hour and increases from there. Our cases require, especially felony cases, many hours of attorney work. On the conservative side, and trust me, I was very conservative here when I did these numbers, to defend a felony case costs $10,000 or more for privately appointed counsel. Each case, to replace the work done by assistant public defenders in this single division, would cost well over $6 million. To meet the budget target, I would have to close at least 3 divisions in my office, costing the county millions of dollars for private counsel, far in excess of the savings achieved by meeting my target. We, the public defenders, do not bring in revenue. We engage in human services. Lives are affected by what we do and what we don't do. Excessive workloads lead to lawsuits, as we've seen in New Orleans, Miami-Dade, Florida, Missouri, and there are many pending across the country by the ACLU because of workload issues in public defense. To provide a meaningful defense, the responsibilities of an attorney representing a client facing the loss of liberty are substantial. The attorney must meet with and interview the client, seek appropriate pretrial release, investigate the case, obtain expert analysis as necessary, obtain and review discovery, create the theory of the case, conduct appropriate legal research, file and argue motions with evidentiary hearings as appropriate, communicate and negotiate with the prosecutor, respond to the prosecutor's motions, prepare for trial, present an alternative sentencing plan in appropriate cases, and keep the client informed throughout. I was a young assistant public defender in the 1990s at the height of the war on drugs. I was defending 150 felony cases at any time. I was walking in effectiveness. I know what it's like to have too many clients and not enough time and not enough resources. No paralegals, no social workers to help me do my job, no outreach worker to find information about the family for sentencing. I know what that's like. Since I know what I did during those many years, I cannot allow my office to descend to that depth again. I won't do it. Instead, I will cut divisions. I will cut those divisions that I am not constitutionally mandated to do. And I'll turn that responsibility of defending a large portion of clients to you and therefore the private bar, who will be paid a lot more than we're spending on my office. And I want to point out something we don't talk a lot about that's important for you to remember. I'm starting from a budget that is not in parity with the Cook County State's Attorney. I have already done the analysis between the two programs, line by line. I did not consider those functions that the State's Attorney do that I don't do, like the Narcotics Forfeiture Unit or the Civil Actions Bureau. I also looked at the fact that my office defends 89% of the criminal cases in Cook County and about 95% of the juveniles. So I looked at those numbers. At the very least, again, being very conservative, I should be funded at $90 million next year to be on parity with the Cook County State's Attorney's budget. Even then, the resources are not equitable between prosecution and defense. And here's why. Because the State's Attorney has investigators in her office, but she also has a disposal of 13,000 Chicago police officers, thousands of suburban police officers, the entire Illinois State Police Force, every Chicago and Illinois State Police Crime Lab, and more. I have 60 investigators. And what I told you last year is when we get a case, we start at zero. We start at ground zero and we must investigate. That's not the same for the prosecutor. So in conclusion, the Public Defender's Office and I, my entire team, are devoted, as you know, to representing the poor and fighting against racism. The effects of the budget target would be devastating to that cause. If we're truly dedicated to fighting against police abuse and against racism, then in truth, my budget should be increased, not decreased. We lost a great civil rights leader this past weekend, Representative John Lewis. Emblematic of what my office does was expressed when he spoke to public defenders in Atlanta in 2016. And this is what he said. He said, if it hadn't been for the lawyers during that period, I don't know where we would be as a nation or as a people. Thank you for getting in the way, for defending those who have been left out and left behind. Your public defenders in this county are part of this racial reckoning that is here today. We find ourselves in this racist system and we make sure the system is fair by being on the front lines of police, prosecutorial, and judicial accountability. We file motions that uncover facts that are inconsistent with police narratives. We show that evidence is incredible. We weed out biased jurors. We stop the racist narrative from infiltrating the court system and becoming the norm. The president's message concerning equity is that we need to reduce inequity by ensuring policies and fiscal decisions that consistently meet the needs of all residents. Requiring my office to meet this budget target is the opposite of that goal. I'll have to cut services, deny the representation to categories of individuals, and reallocate my existing resources to provide effective representation to those clients that remain. I cannot meet the budget target and still perform the constitutional statutory duties that I'm obligated to perform. So thank you for listening. I know that was lengthy, and I'm ready for any questions you may have.
Well, thank you, Amy, as usual, for your strong defense of your office and your legal obligations to the individuals you serve, as well as all the people, public defenders under you. Just quickly, I know a reference was made to the young girl that is being investigated. It should not be accepted. But also, let me say, I know there was a number of police officers. I know one was he's in danger of losing his eyesight as a part of that protest. Protests that are the rights of individuals to go and legally go out, but the way it turned violent is wrong, and we saw that return. But I know before we go on to questions, you mentioned you're at a 12% cut, I believe, Amy, and I'm sorry, Amy, and I know the budget director, I thought it was 9%, and I wanted some clarification on that.
Yes, you're asking the budget director, excuse me.
Hi, Commissioner. I need to go back and look at the target, but I do believe her target was a 9% cut, and it was on the FY 2020 appropriation amount.
Well, okay, so then maybe between your office and Amy's could get together, because she's indicating that her cut would be a 12% cut.
We can walk her through that, yes.
Okay, and Amy, congratulations on the announcement today. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to join you, but I look forward to working with you on this and many other issues. We've discussed more of a holistic approach, and I truly believe that's somewhere we really have to expand on. And you've been a leader in that, and everyone working together on that issue.
Thank you.
Commissioner Britton.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Amy, for the presentation. Being a civil litigation attorney, it's annoying that we don't have juries. It causes things to slow down. But I don't have any clients in jail who can't get their case resolved because we can't have jury trials safely. And the decision not to have them is correct. I'm sure you agree with me. But I'm wondering about not only the number of people who are continuing to wait for a trial, but the incredible increasing backlog which is going to take place every day. So I guess my questions are, one, is there anything you can do? And I'm sure you're not going to submit to bench trials. I wouldn't if I was representing your clients. And then the right to a jury trial is obviously sacrosanct. But are there any options you can pursue either with the courts or with the state's attorney? And have you been privy to whatever discussions are going on as to when we can get juries back in to try to get some resolution on these cases for those who are detained?
So thank you for that question, Commissioner Britton. I have been privy to all the conversations. We have been meeting regularly, all the stakeholders, including the chief judge. Before we reopened court on July 6th, we had several working groups. Several members of my staff were on those working groups talking about all the issues, including jury trials and triage of cases to try and tackle the backlog, which is what they've been doing this entire month. We've been trying to dispose of everything we can that doesn't take a bench trial or jury trial or an evidentiary hearing. So, but that's gonna start ending now, and we're gonna have to start doing litigation. So many of the presiding judges in the different districts have already set up plans to start doing litigation in person in court. There's going to be certain afternoons where we're going to start doing Fourth Amendment motions, Fifth Amendment motions with live witnesses, police officers, other witnesses. So we're going to be doing that soon. I don't think we've had any bench trials yet, but we had motions set this week with live people, and everybody's going to be in court. right? We've gotten the courthouses set up with plexiglass. People, where they have to stand, where they have to sit, whether they're going to be, I sent out my own recommendations to Chief Judge Evans. We talked about it, but the one thing that we have sort of put on hold is the jury trial. Now, I have given him suggestions because other counties are doing jury trials. Quite frankly, I don't remember if it was Kane or Kendall. They were using a gymnasium. I'm looking into McCormick Place. I was hopeful that I was getting information from someone on my staff who knows someone on the board of McCormick Place. Perhaps we could do jury trials in McCormick Place. But we do have large courtrooms that can be safely situated to do a jury trial. And across the country, public defenders are doing jury trials. They are starting jury trials. So we have to make sure the courtroom is safe. Where do we put the 60 people who come in? In a felony case, you usually do not have less than at least 60 jurors to start from your selection. Sometimes it's 100. So where would all these people wait before they are picked on the veneer? So we can do it. We can do it safely. We do have some courtrooms that can space people out, but we haven't talked about a date. There has not been a specific date. So I expect on our next conversation, our next meeting with all the stakeholders, we do have a stakeholders meeting Tuesday. And I'm hopeful that we will start talking about when we're going to start jury trials. We're going to look at how it's been going this month. And then what were the hiccups, right? How we can do better. My staff is coming into their office on a staggered schedule. We're trying to still keep the footprint down. But they are coming to court. They're going to court because people are coming to court and they need lawyers in the courtroom with them. So we're doing a lot of virtual, but as I've said to all my lawyers and what I will say to you, we will not do evidentiary hearings where witnesses testify, any kind of bench trial, any kind of issue where, in my opinion, the judge needs to be looking at a client before they sentence them to the penitentiary, not just over a screen. Right? Because if you're going to put someone in the penitentiary, you should be looking at them in person. I'm sorry, but that's what has to happen. And we have to be able to present mitigation in person. So there are several types of hearings that I will not allow my lawyers to do virtually, because that'll be a violation of the Sixth Amendment right to confrontation. So we're going to get there. But in the meantime, we can still get rid of some of the backlog of cases that we know can help us in the future. So next month, we're not so crazy, right? I mean, we're working on it now, and more cases are still coming in, as you know. Every day, we have anywhere from 50 to 75 people in our central bond court.
Yeah, and Amy, that's my concern, because, I mean, as this just keeps piling up and piling up, we're then going to have issues with people bailing out. We're going to have more people going back to the jail, and we also have more potential for infection. I mean, it snowballs, and you know this better than I do. So the only thing I would ask you is to keep me in the loop on this. Commissioner Sefton and I have been working on, and we've talked about this one-on-one about trying to help with additional pro bono legal representation in the civil context and all the things that are going to be happening with evictions and foreclosures. But I mean, those are important as well. But I mean, it all works into a kind of seamless whole where we also have to make sure that we get these people, the resolution of their cases, good, bad, or indifferent, so that we can also then comply with what their constitutional rights are as well. And as to your budget, I think all of us have heard what you said. As I've said many times, budgets are moral documents. I'm listening. I've heard what you've said. And we'll obviously have to make some tough choices, but I do thank you for the presentation, and we'll do the best we can not to affect your office any more than we absolutely have to.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Before I go to Commissioner Sean Morrison and Commissioner Sefesci, Commissioner Kevin Morrison, and Bill Lowry, Amy, is that when you looking at a McCormick Place, is that you, the state's attorney, the chief, as a group, talking to someone or the board, or you as a public defender?
No, I'm just starting to look at that because I have a contact there.
Okay.
And I thought I might be able to give that solution. I don't even know if they would agree to it. We'd have to have security there, obviously.
Exactly.
But there are places across this state where public defenders and prosecutors are doing jury trials. And they're not just using their courthouses. They're using theaters. They're using gymnasiums. Right? We have to think outside the box here.
Okay.
There's no reason to stall anymore. right? Like DCFS did and just said, oh, we're not going to do what we're mandated to do, right? You know, that's the bad policy. You know, my mentally ill clients have been sitting in Cook County Jail when they should be in psychiatric facilities because the Illinois Department of Mental Health said, oh, we're not taking any people. And the Illinois Department of Corrections, as you know, said, oh, we're going to close our doors. That doesn't sound like leadership to me. I'm sorry. I do not agree with Governor Pritzker on that. We have over 400 people in the jail who should be in a penitentiary right now. Over 400. I think Tom Dart last week said it was 436. We should get that money, right, that it costs for us to house in Cook County Jail. We should get that back from the state because they were sentenced to the penitentiary before this time. They need that would reduce the jail by 436 more people. My mentally ill clients, get them to psychiatric facilities. That would reduce the jail. And I was talking to one of the Dr. Sharon Coleman yesterday from the Illinois Department of Health. She's got 17 clients who are sitting in a psychiatric facility who should be brought to court and their cases resolved because they have become fit now. They were unfit, they're restored. So I want to get those cases done. I want to dispose of those. So I told her to send me the list and I'll make sure we get those cases back into court. So it goes both ways, but unfortunately when COVID came, people just said, stop. And nobody said it more than in the criminal system, in our civil child protection. They just said we're not going to work. I mean, quite literally. And who got the brunt of it? All my clients. You know, that wasn't fair. The rest of us are thinking outside the box. I went into court and filed that motion. We got almost 5,200 bond motions and got people reduced. We say there's only about 16 people in the jail right now who have tested positive of COVID. I think that's the most recent numbers I have. And that's a low number. We have been successful. So we do need to do what Commissioner Britton said. We need to stop infiltrating and keeping people in the jail. And if there are more people coming in the jail, we have to keep social distancing and testing and doing what's necessary to keep contact, the COVID out of the jail. And, you know, again, it wasn't a good thing, but Tom Dart was sued, you know, because they felt that the advocates who filed the lawsuit felt he wasn't doing enough in the jail. I mean, he would argue, of course, against that. But in the meantime, things have changed in the jail, not only because of our motions to release, but also because of the lawsuit and also because of what Tom Dart and his policies have done to keep people safe. So we can do this, but we can't fall into the trap of saying, oh, let's lock everybody up again, right? I've said this to you before. We did that for 50 years. It didn't keep us safer. We had thousands of homicides in the 80s and 90s, okay? It doesn't keep us safer to detain people pre-trial in the Cook County Jail, not only because of COVID, because they are not a danger to the public, and they can be released safely back into their communities, into their homes, into their families. And I don't know where the narrative is. I mean, I know where the narrative is coming from, but it is just not true. And you will hear the chief judge give you the data, and you will hear President Preckwinkle give you the data, and I'm sure Kim Foxx will give you the data that bail reform is working. People are not reoffending. It's a very low percentage of people reoffending, maybe 10% at the lowest. That doesn't mean you lock up 100% of the people because 10% reoffend. And there's only a small percentage who reoffend in a violent manner. That's 10% overall, you know, maybe getting another drug possession, committing another retail theft, but the reoffense on the violent specter is very low. It's still under 1%. Okay? The shootings, the things you're seeing are not being committed by people on bail. I mean, certainly there is the case. We're never going to say you don't have a crystal ball. We'll never have a crystal ball. But that doesn't mean you put the pressure to lock everybody up. So I'm sorry Superintendent Brown is wrong when he says electronic monitoring isn't working. Electronic monitoring is working. I don't know where, and he had no data to support him. And when he says, well, we're not keeping people in jail long enough, that's not true. And you know that's not true. You know the laws are the strictest here, and you know the judges are making the right decisions with the tools they have on pre-trial release. They're doing it the fair, just, non-racist way. So that's what we have to look at in our system. It's time to change, and it's been a good change.
Thank you. Commissioner Sean Morrison.
Thank you, Chairman. Amy, thank you for coming here today. As always, you have a very low-key presentation. In seriousness, no, a couple things. Boy, you've really thrown a lot out there. You've thrown a lot out there. This is obviously a budget hearing review, but you've thrown a lot of philosophical, societal discussion into this mix as well. Some of which I agree, some of which I disagree. We're not going to mitigate that here, however. But I'll tell you some of the things that I do think about. Most folks who follow us know that I am extremely pro law enforcement. And I'm extremely supportive of good, quality, well-trained law enforcement. And I also fundamentally, wholeheartedly agree that those bad apples need to be identified, plucked out, and if the situation calls for it, arrested, prosecuted, and incarcerated themselves. I do believe that that's on a much smaller scale, though. However, that's the uber minority of law enforcement across our nation. That being said, I also completely support that I support what America was built on. The fabric of America was built on due process. And due process means every single person gets his or her day in court. I believe in the Sixth Amendment. These are things that I think every reasonable human being believes in. Everyone has the right to defend themselves. I also strongly support and commend you when it comes to children and minors. You know, listen, some of them commit crimes that are there, but they certainly, you know, deserve every opportunity to be defended and to have their cases mitigated or diminished to whatever extent they can, wherever the facts bear themselves. So as it comes to your department, I agree with you, support you to the extent that you need to have all the tools you can to provide that every person in our nation has the ability to have a defense provided for him or her should they find themselves on the opposite side of the law. So there's a duality there, and I think fair-minded, common-sense people can understand that we want a safe society. That certainly with all the lawlessness that's going on now, we need to bring that under control. But if you're fair-minded, you also need to ensure that we're providing defense for every single person that can't afford their own defense. So that's what I need to say. And so as we go through your budget, if there are areas that are going to be cut, I'm certainly open to the conversations to where we could try and see and you know, patch things back together in that sense. So thank you very much. That's all I got to say.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. And I agree with you wholeheartedly that obviously good police who follow the law are needed now more than ever, right? We need police on our streets, and we need prosecutors, right, and defense attorneys to iron out those cases in court fairly. And that's the best process that any country ever has. You've got an attorney for the defense, you've got an attorney for the prosecution, and the facts come into court and they play out in court. And that's what the process is all about. And it works. It works. We win a lot of cases, we lose a lot of cases. The prosecutor wins a lot of cases, they lose a lot of cases, right? But when you're on the street and you don't follow due process, like you said, and you don't allow people to make phone calls to their loved ones to let them know where they are, and when you don't allow the lawyers in the door who show up and say, I want to see my client, right? That brings distrust. People who are arrested and who are treated unfairly at the police station never forget. They remember that for the rest of their lives. It is traumatic. Many of us on this call probably have never been arrested in our lives, and we have no idea what that's like to be in a police station where you have absolutely no control over what happens to you. And that's where it starts, you know? And when I talk to law enforcement, which I do quite often, I say to them, follow the law, allow the lawyers in, give them the phone calls, because then trust will come to the communities. Because guilty people, right? People who commit crimes, we have people who commit crimes. They deserve to be treated fairly upon arrest, no matter what crime they're going to be charged with. What we see in our system here in Chicago and Cook County is that the more egregious the crime you're charged with or arrested on, the less likely your due process rights will be stood up. The more likely you will be violated in your due process rights. The more likely you'll be put in a lockup room and not given access to a phone and not given your medication. And two wrongs do not make a right. And that's the training for law enforcement. And that's where they need to be held accountable when they don't apply the law and treat people with dignity and humanity, no matter what they're arrested for. I'm not talking about the clients. Like Commissioner Daley said, there were definitely people out there who should have been arrested during the protests. And guess what? They'll get their day in court, but it has to be fair. And they can't be treated unfairly at a police station, because I'm telling you, they never forget.
Thank you. That's all, Chairman.
I can't hear.
Commissioner Silvestri?
Oh, here.
Listen up, Amy. I hope you can hear.
Yes, I can hear you now.
Thank you so much for the hard work of your office and all the people that work for it. There's two concepts in the Constitution that I think we must remember when we talk about anything we do, especially when it comes to prosecution and defense, and that is the due process clause of course, because it guarantees that the process is followed and it's a fair decision. Also, equal protection under the law, another concept that is very difficult for other societies to understand, but something that sets our system apart from the rest. I have no problem sending someone who committed a crime to jail. I just want to make sure that they actually committed it and that the process allowed for it to be found that they committed it. Because if it's not fair, it's not valid, in my opinion. So I support a strong public defender's office, as I support a strong state's attorney's office. It would be great to have two wonderful offices, great offices that do the job and guarantee, or at least as best as we can, guarantees that the right verdict is found. So I congratulate the process, and I hope it continues to improve. My questions on the budget, however, are with respect to the holdback. Did you say that you met that requirement with the COVID reimbursement and so forth?
I am hoping to meet that holdback with the COVID-related expenses that I have sent to budget recently, which amounted to $1.3 million. We put all our data together because those bond motions were definitely COVID-related, and we should get credit for that towards the CARES Act. So I met the holdback was $5 million, and I met $3 million by stopping hiring, delaying hiring, giving back transportation money, expert witness money, and some other line items. So I was $2 million short. But I think I'm going to be able to make that $2 million no problem with the COVID-related expenses that my office has done. You haven't
had the holdback, but you're in process of attempting to do so. Is that
yes.
correct?
And if I might, Commissioner Silvestri, this is Annette Guzman. We are working directly with Amy's office on the reimbursements that we're going to be submitting for the work that her office did with getting people bonded out of the detention center. And I want to, credit Peter and his staff for all the work that they've been doing on getting us the data to understand that work and the hours that they put in to do that work.
Thank you. The question I have with respect to that is, how many vacancies do you have, and how much does that represent in terms of funding? Do we know the answer to that offhand? Do you have vacancies in your office?
I have very few vacancies. I think it's like 35 right now.
What's your total staff?
My total staff, I'm budgeted for, I think, 690. Peter,
this is Peter. This is Peter Kosarko, CFO for the Public Defender's Office. Yes, we're budgeted in 20 for 690 positions, and currently we're approximately about between 35 and 40 vacancies as we continue to bring people on.
Is it your goal to continue to bring those people on until the fiscal year, or not hold off? Are you looking to hold off or hire those people? Peter, Amy?
Peter, do you want me to answer that? So we're hiring a few people. Yeah, go ahead.
As part of the holdback agreement with the budget, we are kind of holding off on significant hiring till the end of the year. But if we do have a critical position that comes up, like management or deputy or chief, we will hire into that. So we are committed to pretty firm hiring freeze going forward on any vacancies.
Okay. Thank you, Amy, and thank you, Peter, and thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Kevin Morrison.
Thank you, Chairman, and hello, Public Defender. It is always great to hear your voice. I want to begin by first thanking you for your hard work to get nonviolent offenders out of the county jail during this pandemic. I also want to share my appreciation for you defending peaceful protesters and being able to provide them with the representation they need. Something that you just stated makes me want to share a story with our fellow commissioners that are on this line. You're right. Many of us probably have never been arrested. And though I personally have never been formally arrested, I think that this story is worth a share, because if it could happen to me, it could happen to anyone. But when I was 18 years old, I was picked up by two investigators at my high school and brought to a local police department to answer some questions that I needed to have answered, in which I was interrogated for 2.5 hours, in which they stated to me that they had video evidence of me committing a crime, and that if I didn't admit to it, I would be arrested, they would take my fingerprints, and I'd be held for a felony. Throughout that time that I was being interrogated, I was denied the ability to make a phone call 4 times. It was not till the 5th time that I asked to make a phone call that I was actually able to make that call. And at that point, I was so physically, mentally harmed by this experience that I broke down. I was sobbing because I did not commit that crime. And when I demanded to finally see the video evidence that they were saying that they had me on tape committing the crime, they had no such evidence. And so if those tactics were used against a 18-year-old me in the northwest suburbs of Chicago, we know some of the processes that are being conducted. Now, I do want to share, and it's a short paragraph, all commissioners on this line all swore to uphold the Constitution. I literally have 3 constitutions on my desk right now. The 6th Amendment states, in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and most importantly, to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. Now, as we are making decisions on our budget, we have to remember we all swore as commissioners to uphold this document. And so it's incredibly important that we keep that in mind as we are thinking about what the budget for the Public Defender's Office should look like for fiscal year 2021. Now, I do want to ask you, I know that this is an issue that's important to you and it potentially has cost-saving abilities for the county. I know you've been working hard on the suspended licenses issue, and I was hoping you might be able to elaborate. I know I reached out to the state's attorney's office on this issue, and I was hoping you could discuss that here.
So my goal for suspended licenses, since I came into this position several years ago, when I actually talked to Secretary of State Jesse White about it, is that it should not be a crime, right? Driving on a suspended license must be decriminalized. We must not be able to, first of all, it's a felony. Sometimes it's a misdemeanor and sometimes it's a felony, depending on if you've had a prior driving on a suspended license. And I have always said, and I think I told all of you this last year, that when it's a felony, people go to prison on driving on a suspended license. And we actually looked up last year, and Lester's on this call, if Lester could remind the commissioners, how many people are sitting in prison right now on driving on a suspended license, Lester. What was that number that we looked up last week?
This is Lester, and according to the IDOC annual report for 2019, there are 400 people in IDOC that are there for what the way they characterize it as a non-DUI traffic violation.
Think about that. Think about the lives that are destroyed from not just those 400 people, right? All their families, all their communities destroyed because they got into a car and they drove somewhere with a license that was suspended. They didn't hurt anyone. They didn't commit a DUI. They may have committed a DUI in the past, right? That's why it might have been originally suspended. But the crime that you are sentenced on should only be the crime you have committed. We've got to stop sentencing people on their past crimes, right? That's another problem we have in this country. That's why we have felons over and over and over again who then go to the penitentiary because of crimes they committed in the past, right? Not because of the crime they're charged with. So if I'm going to be, Kim Fox is out of town, but I want to work with her on this issue. And I want to work to get a collaboration of people to put a bill in Springfield. My staff knows, Errol Laudermilk, who is my now deputy of legislation, knows how sincerely I want to change this law, because it really should be a citation. It should be, why can't we just make it a citation? I told you about the story. My husband represented someone up in the northern suburbs, and he was a union electrician, and he had a prior DUI from 18 years prior, and he never got to get his license back, right? Because once you suspend your license, it's the snowballs. If you get into a car and you get a second one, it's almost impossible to get your license back. It's impossible. And that's something I can work with the Secretary of State on, making it easier for people to get their licenses reinstated. Now we have our third driver's license reinstatement summit coming up in September. It's going to be part of it's going to be virtual. The first two were very successful. We helped almost 5,000 people, if you look at both summits, get on the way to getting their licenses cleared up. So then they won't be looking at a felony or even a misdemeanor, quite frankly. Why is it a crime? So I am working on that. It is one of my goals. We don't have a bill written up right now. We actually do, I think, have some language for a bill down in Springfield. I'm hopeful that we could maybe make an ordinance here in Cook County to start the process. I don't know, under home rule, I'd have to talk to some of you whether we could do that. But I don't see why that kind of law is that. And think about all those people who wouldn't have to come to traffic court. Most of traffic court is suspended licenses. We get our fair share of DUIs and other traffic offenses that you might be able to, because we only represent clients whose liberty is at stake. I don't represent people who are just having a ticket, right, and can pay a fine. Public defenders represent people on misdemeanor traffic violations and felonies. But there are lots of people who are coming to court on these types of cases. So definitely, I would like to have that conversation with Kim Fox and her team. I haven't been able to sit down and talk with her over this past 4 months, but I recently sent her a letter asking her about some of these initiatives, and that's one of my initiatives to talk to her about.
Well, I thank you for your advocacy on this issue. I just want to say, as a commissioner, I plan full and well of holding up to my obligations to protect the Constitution, and as someone who has spoken fervently about the need for greater equity, we have been unable as a nation to ensure equal access to adequate counsel, despite that constitutional mandate. And it's something that we need to live up to and work towards. And so I thank you for your work. I, like yourself, do not want to see mental illness criminalized at the county jail. And I'm working hard to see that those processes are changed as well. But I appreciate you and all your hard work, and I'm wishing you well. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your support.
Chairman, this is Commissioner Anaya. May I jump in?
Chairman, you're muted. I think you had Commissioner Aguilar's hand, and then
You have Commissioner Aguilar, and then you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Commissioner
All right, thank
Aguilar.
you, Chair.
Bill, did you have a Bill, did you have any comments? I see you had raised your hand. Apparently, Bill might be having some problems Bill? Well, why don't we go to Commissioner Aguilar and then we'll come back to Commissioner Lowry because I can't hear him.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Hi, Amy. How are you?
Hello, good morning, Commissioner.
We're good. Can you comment on, without immigration specialists, how are we failing the undocumented residents in Cook County? And also, can you speak a little bit about the number of families that have been taken or ripped away from their children, and the list, especially the ones that are ripped from, especially newborn, and when they get deported.
So Commissioner, I don't have the numbers on families that are destroyed when ICE comes and takes someone away from the family, but I'll refer to Lester in a minute because we've looked up the numbers of people who are in immigration court in a year here in Cook County. But the issue with what my office is currently doing since 2010 when the law was changed, I was not the public defender. And many public defender offices across the country immediately started an immigration, it's called a Padilla unit. They brought immigration specialists into their office so that those specialists who were versed in immigration law, which is very complex, very nuanced, to provide advice to the lawyers who were representing non-citizens on criminal cases. We did not do that in Cook County. We didn't have a unit. What we did was, though, we reached out to other lawyers who do that work, like the National Immigration Justice Center, other immigration law firms across this county that do that work. So if we had a question, if we were going to do a plea of guilty, we would reach out and get advice before we did that things. But I will be very frank with you. I'm sure there were clients that we did not do that for. And I am sure we were not giving them effective representation under the law. And that's what I'm trying to start with this unit, right? I'm going to hire this immigration supervisor who is from that world and has been doing the work for years in immigration court and knows all the different status, all the different issues that affect our non-citizens when they come to immigration court. What are the defenses that you put forward to get someone not held before they're removed, right? What is the story to put together for the judge and the prosecutor to keep them out of the system? How do we have we need outreach workers to go into the communities and get the help of the advocates that you saw today during the press release this morning. So we reach out, and we do have many different immigration lawyers who we reach out to. We have a network, but they're not on call, right? They're not available to not only second chair my lawyers, right? I would like an immigration lawyer if there's a non-citizen that's going to trial on a criminal case, and to then go into immigration court to represent that client that we represent on the criminal case, right? To be another eyes and ear with an immigration specialist. So that's the unit. We have to do it. We're mandated to do it under the law. And that's what I want to do. I think that we have a huge support, not only in the community, of course, and yourself, and many of the commissioners here today, but also we have the law on our side. And quite frankly, the lawyers want to do this work, right? They want to effectively advocate for their client, their non-citizens. No lawyer doesn't want to know the information they need to know to represent someone fully. No lawyer wants to be behind the 8 ball, you know, and have someone's life destroyed and then that family destroyed in the community. So I'm hopeful that we can get that started, and with our public-private partnership with some funding agencies that have agreed to help us fund this unit. And so the strain will be less on the county. I'm always looking for grant money. I actually have a new grant analyst that just started today. It was a replacement from the one I had before who got me those grants I was just talking about. Almost $500,000 I got last year for these needed positions. So it's very important to have someone who understands grants, who can write grants, who can have the people who give the money understand why it's important for the office, right? That's how you get grant money. It's very complicated to even apply for a grant. So I don't know if I've answered all your questions, but Lester, did you have any numbers for the amount of non-citizens? We did an informal study, just so you know, from my office during COVID. I asked every one of my lawyers to tell me how many non-citizens they represent. And the number was something like 700. But I find that that's low. I think then that wasn't looking at files. That was just off the top of their head trying to remember. And I told you, it's from 34 countries. We did an Excel spreadsheet. Many countries. This is not just South, Central, and Latin America here. We're talking about Eastern Europe. We're talking about the Caribbean. We're talking about Haiti. Many, many countries across the world. We have non-citizens here who are charged with crimes. And quite frankly, getting back to the driving on a suspended license case, so that law, that crime became a felony, I believe, 10 years ago. Again, Lester, if you could refresh my memory on that, when driving on a suspended license became a felony?
That I do not know off the top of my head. I apologize.
But it was, within the last 10 or 15 years. And guess who they were targeting? They were targeting non-citizens. And what it says is, if you've never had a driver's license, right? And you drive without a license, right? And you might be, it's a DUI too, but I'm talking about, you're barely over the limit, right? And you have a DUI and you don't have a license because you can't get a license. Because non-citizens can't get a license, right? Until they go through a lot of hoops, right? You can't just come to the United States and get a driver's license. So they drive because they have to drive to get to their jobs or pick up their child from daycare or, quite frankly, go to the grocery store, or they don't have public transportation where they live, and they do get stopped for a DUI. A regular citizen, that's a misdemeanor. That's a misdemeanor offense for the rest of us who are citizens. For an undocumented person, a non-citizen, that's a felony. Why should a DUI for a citizen be a misdemeanor and a DUI for someone who's a non-citizen be a felony? I'm talking about the first-time offender. And then your license is automatically suspended. When you get a DUI, many cases your license is suspended, and then you never get it fixed because it costs money, and you have to go to a formal hearing, and there's all these stupid bureaucratic hoops and jumps to get your license back. And instead, you don't know the system, you don't speak the language, so now you're on that spiral again, right? So you might walk away with probation on a felony DUI where a citizen would not even be looking at it. And then you continue to drive and you didn't get your license back, and now that suspended license charge becomes a felony too. Like a year later, now you got another felony. Now you're going to prison. Now you are going to prison. Judges in this county send people to prison on driving on suspended license all the time. We have 433 judges here in Cook County. I don't know how many in the criminal court system, but it's well over 200. And I'm telling you, there are judges who do not give you another break, right? I got your probation on the first one, but the second one, now you drove when I told you not to drive and you're on my probation for that DUI, now I'm sending you to the penitentiary. So that's how it is such a racist law. It is one of the most racist laws we have on the books in Illinois.
Thank you. Also, I think this is a perfect opportunity for Black Lives Matter to demonstrate that they're a voice for disenfranchised and fighting systematic racism. And I think all my colleagues are at the point where support your issues. Also, will you keep giving the numbers of families that were separated to COVID, and if those restrictions were lifted?
Well, there were still like the Department of Children and Family Services where they couldn't have visits. Oh, it's every family, and we represent at least 2,000 families, my office, at least 2,000 or 3,000 families. I think actually it's 3,000. Lester, maybe you have those numbers right in front of you.
I don't have them right in front of me, but if the commissioner wants, I could forward the information and the complaint that was filed, the complaint that was filed in civil court.
Yes. Yeah. But they just started visits. They just started visits, I think, like this week or maybe next week. These children for 4 months have not had visits with their parents or their siblings. Yet DCFS workers go into the homes and out of the homes of the foster families. The foster families are allowed to have babysitters come in and out of their homes. But we can't set up supervised visits at a McDonald's or somewhere where people can wear masks. No, they're asked to look at their children on a screen. 1-year-olds, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds. Imagine trying to be with your child through a screen, a toddler, a 10-year-old. That's not a visit. It's not, and that's traumatic. The children don't understand why they can't see their family and their brothers and sisters. But that's what DCFS decided to do in violation, by the way, of the law. Of the law. And that's why we're appealing that decision. That judge made the wrong decision.
Very good. I don't have the county numbers, but I'm looking at this is the budget here. Undocumented residents, it says here that they generate over $11 billion into our economy, and it costs the state $3.5 billion. So they're paying their fair share.
Yeah.
Most of the families. So again, thank you very much. I might have a couple more questions, but I think that's it for now. Okay, thank you, Amy.
Thank you. And you can always email us questions too, and I'll get back to you.
All right.
Amy, this is Bill.
Commissioner Lowry, followed by Commissioner Anaya.
Thank you.
Hello, Commissioner Lowry. Good morning.
Amy, it's always wonderful to hear your voice. So I hope you're doing well and appreciate our good work.
Thank you.
We've got 75% of our detainees are Black. 16% of the detainees are Latinx. I want to thank you and your department for taking on, and I mean head on, the new Jim Crow. It is recognized and it is appreciated. Now, my question has to do with the budget. You may have addressed this, but I had to repatch in a couple times since you started. If forced, which divisions would be considered for closure? I'm interested in those three that you had mentioned relative to the work which is not based on your constitutional requirements.
So we do post-conviction work. And under the law, it's not constitutionally mandated that the public defender represent clients in post-conviction matters. And we used to have an entire appellate division here in the public defender's office years ago. And 2 or 3 public defenders before me, Rita Fry, disbanded the appellate lawyer position. And we did post-conviction work then, plus appeals. Now all appeals are done by the Office of the State Appellate Defender. We do some child protection appeals, but doesn't fall under the 6th Amendment constitutional right. Okay? I'm not saying that I would ever want to not do that work, because just so you know, today I got an email that 3 of our clients, because of my post-conviction lawyers, were granted clemency or early release from the penitentiary. That's the work we're doing during COVID. We're getting people early released out of the penitentiary who have already served several years. And 2 of the cases, I believe, were homicide cases, and I can't remember what the 3rd case is. And we've already gotten people out on clemency. Now, we've never done clemency petitions. That's not even in our realm, but my lawyers took it upon themselves to educate themselves how to write a clemency petition, because they knew that their clients were at risk of getting sick and dying in the penitentiary, which quite frankly hasn't done a good job in COVID, right? Our Illinois Department of Corrections, they haven't done a good job of social distancing and keeping the virus down. Again, another state agency that just closed their doors, right? And, are trying to do what we're all doing. So today, we had success in 3 human beings, and their families now are going to be reunited with them, and they're going to have a life back in their communities. And hopefully, they're not going to have to wear a scarlet letter, right? They've served their time. The governor has decided to give them clemency or early release, and now they can actually get back into society. So I want to do that work, but that is one of the divisions. And I believe I have, I don't know, maybe 25, 28 lawyers in that unit who are, by the way, some of my most experienced lawyers in the office and some of the best lawyers I have in this office. The other 2 divisions are the conflict divisions. That's child protection conflicts and my multiple defendant division. Those divisions, under the law, as I see it, and under the rules of professional conduct for all lawyers in the state of Illinois and quite frankly across the country, in a criminal case, we should only represent one client. If we represent more than one client, we're in conflict. And we know in criminal law, and it says this in the law and in the rules and in the case law, that the possibility is so grave that one client will point the finger at another client, right? It makes sense. It happens every day. Testify against someone to get a better deal. No, I wasn't the one who went into the house, so I should get less of a sentence than the second public defense, right? It's pointing the finger, even at sentencing, during the trial. So those 2 divisions, I believe, I am not constitutionally mandated to do, and I believe it is in violation of the law. And one is the second parent in a case. We used to only represent the custodial parents. When the state is trying to take your children because of allegations of abuse and neglect, we have always represented the custodial parent, which many times is the mother. But now, I believe that was the public defender before me, Judge Cunningham, agreed, again, for cost-saving measures with the county to represent the second parent, which usually is a father, of course. And then there's sometimes other fathers, right? Sometimes there's 3 children in the family, but there might be 2 or 3 fathers. So those other fathers are represented by private counsel. So I looked at those numbers yesterday, and I looked at how much it costs, how much those lawyers who represent those parents in court, how much they bill, right? They start at anywhere from $75 to $125 an hour. Those cases last for years, years. Those private attorneys are billing the county 2-3 years because you know what? The rights of parents don't get terminated, right? Which is a good thing until you make sure you've done everything. Has the Department of Children and Family Services offered all the services necessary under the law to reunify the family? And once they have done all that, then the case is on the track for parents' rights to be terminated. But that takes a couple years, right? So that's very costly. Those lawyers are billing the system, and you can get those invoices. You pay those invoices. You can see those. But one case is, thousands of dollars. One case, thousands. And it's much more economic to fund my office, to have my office represent the second parent, to have my office represent post-conviction matters where we're successful and do child protection appeals, and to have my office represent the second defendant in a case. That's my third unit. We represent the first defendant, and then we represent the second defendant if 2 people are arrested. That's my multiple defendant unit. And those are, by the way, my most experienced lawyers besides my homicide task force lawyers. Those are only grade 3 and grade 4 lawyers because most of the cases with multiple defendants are homicides, ag hijackings, armed robberies, attempt murders. And they're very serious cases. So, of course, I need my lawyers who have the most experience to represent those clients. So they would be devastated. You do not have, I would have to train all the private bar to get enough lawyers to step up and do these cases, right? You just don't pick up a homicide case when you're 2 years out of law school, right? My homicide lawyers have been in this office for 20 years and more. They know how to hold police accountable. They know what to subpoena. They know what expert witnesses to call. They know how to cross-examine the Illinois State Police Crime Lab and the Chicago Crime Lab. They know how to fight that false ballistics evidence and those false fingerprint evidence. And we travel across the country and teach others how to do that, my lawyers, right? So these are my top-notch lawyers. And if you make me stop doing that work because you can't fund me, the private bar will step in. And if nobody's watching the private bar and we just give these cases willy-nilly, you're going to have lawsuits on you. You're going to have people in effect, are not representing clients effectively. There's going to be all sorts of issues with the cases, wrongful convictions. We don't want that. We want to make my office the best public defender office. So you can be proud that everybody is getting a fair trial, that the evidence is being tested in court, which is where it needs to be tested, right? At trial. And that I have mitigators putting forth the story of this human being to a judge to say, why, judge, you can take a chance on this person and this person doesn't need to go to the penitentiary. And here's why. Let me tell you the story that I've put together about my client from birth till today. Let me humanize this person that you want to lock up in a cage for the rest of their life, right? That's what we do as public defenders. That's what we must do. But I'm telling you, it's just not going to work. If you should fund my office properly, let us do the job that we're capable of doing. Give me the resources I need so that I don't have to stop doing this important work for the residents of Cook County.
I have one follow-up question. Has the post-conviction work impacted the recidivism rate in any way?
Boy, I don't know if I don't think I can answer that question. I'll tell you what post-conviction work does. It looks at pattern and practice of law enforcement, right? A big part of our post-conviction work has been helping to uncover all of the pattern and practice policies of not only Chicago Police Department, but other police departments and their unlawful behavior and their unlawful policies, right? And that's how we get their cases reversed, right? And we also, obviously, we're retesting and looking at new evidence that comes forth, right? Evidence of innocence, new discoveries in forensic evidence, the DNA evidence that shows that this person was wrongfully convicted, or the faulty fingerprint evidence that was allowed to go in court that never should have been, or an expert who testified who never should have been qualified as an expert witness and was so instrumental, right? When an expert gets on a witness stand, the juries believe them, right? They believe everything they say, hook, line, and sinker. And we've discredited many expert witnesses, because that's what we do. That's what we must do to represent these clients. But recidivism, that I don't know, because post-conviction work takes years. We get these clients after they've already been in the penitentiary for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, some earlier than that. But that's the nature of the work. And we're working very closely, by the way, with the state's attorney's office and their conviction integrity unit. We're working together to weed out the cases that they are investigating themselves, that they know was a wrongful conviction. And my post-conviction lawyers are a big part of the collaborative that's working with the mayor's office and the other organizations to the Police Accountability Task Force. All my lawyers in that unit are working with those collaboratives and the different policies that have come out of the federal consent decree. So we're working with all the other civil rights lawyers, having meetings, being involved in the front lines of changing policies and changing law.
Thank
you. So they don't just represent clients. We're involved in these committees and doing all this other work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nothing further, Chairman.
Thank you. Before I go to Commissioner Anaya, just a reminder, Commissioners, the state's attorney will be appearing next Tuesday following the pension committee. And I just, the time there is
12:30, sir.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Anaya.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Public Defender Campanelli. Really appreciate this conversation overall, because you've highlighted some really interesting and valuable things that your office does. And I think that the common thread here is addressing the issues systematic issues that have continued to separate families. You mentioned incarceration. You've mentioned some of the state departments that have caused separation. I think that this is very important because often when you're thinking about family separation, you think automatically to immigration. You're not really looking again at what has happened historically and disproportionately to Black communities and Latinx communities here in Cook County with mass incarceration, the school to prison pipeline that is very well, I think, in existence here and very prevalent. But you also highlight the what happens when there is a national movement that is asking for equality, that is asking for justice, specifically in the light of George Floyd and some of the other people that have been killed by the state or have been prosecuted by the state. So I appreciate that conversation. I think it's very valid. I, of course, have been very fond of the discussion. Have definitely been having this discussion with your office as well over, what can we do to ensure that there are defenders for all, that there is representation, and that there's advocacy for the people that have historically been impacted, which majority of the time is communities of color. And to be quite frank, it's Black men who have been incarcerated in our Cook County system and in our jail. So I appreciate that, and I'm very much looking forward to working with you to continue to advocate for defenders. I do want to, of course, bring up the proposal that you've included in regards to the immigration unit, and I think again I've been working with your office on this and advocating for this. But one really important step and a thing that you mentioned was the Padilla versus Kentucky case, which tells us as an entity we should have the conversations of what happens as a, when you have a criminal case and what is the implication to your immigration case. And to your earlier point, sometimes they're on two different scales. An immigrant or a person that if they were a citizen might have been charged with a misdemeanor ends up getting charged with a felony, and the inequities that exist there. And it speaks volumes to the fact that, we often advocate and we often say that the county is a welcoming county and that we are an area where we love to be like sanctuary and that we put these ideals. Yet we are in charge of the criminal justice system, and we're often in charge of the fact that people have to plead guilty or have to find some type of other plea that will directly impact their immigration status, leading to deportations for things such as, having, like you mentioned, not having a valid license at the time. And I want to uplift a story that I know that your office has uplifted as well, which is Rene Olivo San Gabriel, who was a detainee in our Cook County jail that actually unfortunately lost his life to COVID in our custody because he opted to stay in Cook County jail so that he wouldn't have a negative impact on his immigration case. Therefore, he prolonged his time in our jail, again, for him not to be deported and separated from his family. And that speaks volumes to the fact that we need to continue to advocate for individuals to be released from jail, for individuals to have resources and to have advocacy before they come into our criminal justice system. And the only way to do that is to be able to capture and advocate when they are starting in any type of criminal cases. And this goes both for our regular citizens, but it should also definitely be true for our non-citizens. So I'm extremely excited and very happy that you are starting off with a Padilla unit and continuing that advocacy to align the two, both the criminal and defense, but also how it what is the implication in their immigration case. And then obviously, I know that you mentioned the 3-year plan for your immigration unit, and I'm very excited to be able to work with your office and others continue to uplift the fact that as a county, we shouldn't just say that we are sanctuary, and we shouldn't just say that we're welcoming, but we need to put it into action because the country is asking for it. Our residents are asking for it. Our communities are asking and pleading for it. We're seeing more and more people take the streets and advocate for the fact that our systems are unjust and our systems are racist, and that the systems have continually to disproportionately impact people of color. And I'm again very excited that you're looking at a very holistic way of addressing how to defend all individuals that come into our courts and that have any type of interference with Cook County. So thank you again for your advocacy, and I look forward to working with you, specifically going into the 2021 budget and being able to advocate for your office. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Anaya. And I just want to say thank you so much for your advocacy for the immigration unit and for helping me to put forth the plan and work with all the advocates on the ground, all of your connections and your constituents, which I know you've said on many times that you represent the most non-citizens in the county, your district. So I know what they want, and I know what they need, and I know that you're fighting for that. And let me just say one last thing. You know, my goal, as I've told all of you in all these years I've been the public defender, is to have less clients, right? I don't want to build a county office just to make it bigger, right? Because if less people are getting arrested or less the mentally ill, and we're deflecting some of these cases out of the system, and we're changing what's being criminalized, and we're making the laws fair and just, that's success to me. Helping people not come into the system, and when they come home, whether it's from the penitentiary or when they get off probation, to help them with their needs so they don't recidivate. That's what all of us in the county have a moral obligation to fight for. And we do that with our new police station unit. We stop people coming into the system, and we try to follow up with those clients that we meet at police stations and that we walk out uncharged, who don't have to come back. We follow up with them to try and keep them on the right path, whether it's getting them in school, getting them mental health treatment. And that's part of this holistic idea, right? No county office that should want to have more people and more this just to have it, right? We have to have the resources we need, but eventually we need to shrink this system and look at the ways that we represent people and the ways, quite frankly, we prosecute people and what we're prosecuting them on. That's success for all of us here. So thank you.
And I will add that I appreciate your willingness also to work with State Attorney Kim Fox on this initiative, because I know that she has been also working specifically in the criminal justice system on that end. So I think that the partnership will be great, and it will a lot of good collaboration can come out of that. And again, the last thing that I just want to say, actually, before I close out, is we're talking about, yes, undocumented people when we talk about immigration court, but let's not forget that there are permanent legal residents who have been in this country for 30 plus years, maybe not citizens, that are really impacted by any of the charges that are brought forward. And it can actually prevent them from becoming citizens, although they have, all the everything else in order. So it's very, very important. I want to make sure that I highlight that. And again, Public Defender, I really appreciate your willingness and your partnership.
Well, thank you.
Any other commissioners who asked to be recognized? Well, then, Amy, thank you very much. We look forward to seeing you in October when the budget is, and it is going to be a very difficult budget, and we're going to be facing many challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And sorry to go over. Thank you.